Hello, everybody. Welcome to Unit 5, Day 5. Today, we're going to be talking about the beginning of Reconstruction, specifically Presidents Abraham Lincoln and Andrew Johnson, and what Reconstruction would look like under them. So, Abraham Lincoln, if you remember the previous slides, we talked about the end of the Civil War and how he directed Grant to be very, very gracious with the South. And that is the attitude that Lincoln had concerning Reconstruction. Lincoln wanted Reconstruction to go very quickly. He wanted states to be allowed back into the Union very, very quickly, because Lincoln knew that if that didn't happen and if the South was punished very brutally for the Civil War, that would lead to more animosity, possibly more fighting and that kind of stuff. And Lincoln had the wisdom to say, I don't want that. I want us to quickly join back together. Now, obviously, things are going to be differently because slaves have been freed and things have changed a lot. And there would be a lot of rebuilding that would have to be done in the South. But again, he wanted this process to go as quickly as possible. Now, Lincoln's plans obviously would not happen. Lee surrendered April 9th. April 14th, you were going to have Abraham Lincoln be assassinated. Now, John Wilkes Booth, who had been an actor in Washington, D.C., his father had been an actor. His brother was an actor in Washington, D.C. Abraham Lincoln had actually seen John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theater act in certain productions during that time. But John Wilkes Booth was a Confederate sympathizer and had been planning for a while to do something. His original plan, it was him and a team of conspirators, was to kidnap Lincoln. Well, that plan never worked out for them. They wanted to kidnap Lincoln, ship him to the South while the war was still going on, and basically use him, get ransom for Abraham Lincoln. That plan never worked. And then on April 9th, when you have Robert E. Lee surrender in Virginia, John Wilkes Booth is going to be enraged and say something has to be done about Abraham Lincoln. So that's when the plan would change from kidnapping to murder. And a lot of people don't realize that it was actually a very big conspiracy to bring down not only Lincoln, but also heads of the U.S. government. So on the night that John Wilkes Booth assassinates Abraham Lincoln, the vice president, Andrew Johnson, was supposed to be killed, as well as the Secretary of State, William Seward. All of them were supposed to be assassinated on that night. Booth would be the only one that would be successful. The guy who went to go kill Andrew Johnson at the hotel that he was staying in, he would actually sit at the bar and get drunk and leave. He would chicken out of doing it. And then the guy who went to go kill Secretary of State William Seward, he would actually be successful getting into the room and stabbing the Secretary of State many, many times. But the Secretary of State had been in a horse accident previously to that and had this big contraption over him, basically holding his neck kind of steady. And because of that, when he was trying to stab him in the neck and stuff, he wasn't able to reach that, although he did injure the Secretary of State very, very poorly, or very, very badly that night. So that was the conspiracy to bring down that. Now, that conspiracy ended up coming out after the assassination. John Wilkes Booth would be found by the U.S. government and refused to surrender and would be shot and killed. The rest of the conspirators would go to trial, a military tribunal. Many of them would be found guilty and would be executed. In fact, you're going to have the first woman executed by the federal government in U.S. history, Mary Surratt. She ran the boarding house that John Wilkes Booth had planned all of this at. Her son had actually been part of that, but he claims that he fled to Canada when he realized that the plan went from kidnapping to murder. He wanted no part of it. He fled to Canada, and then overseas he went. And actually, when he came back, he did have a trial and was found not guilty for his participating in the murder of Abraham Lincoln. So with Lincoln's death, you're going to see that really does throw things into disarray. It puts Andrew Johnson as president. Andrew Johnson, who had been a former slave owner, was from Tennessee. The whole reason Andrew Johnson had been picked to be Abraham Lincoln's running mate in 1864 is because he was considered a compromise candidate, somebody from the South, and hopefully could bring some balance to the South. So Andrew Johnson is put in there. Now, there's going to be another force at hand in all of this, and that force is going to be the radical Republicans. If you remember, when Lincoln originally ran in 1860, we said that he was picked because he wasn't as radical as other Republicans were. The radical Republicans, though, had taken over, and you have a lot of those in the Senate and the House. The radical Republicans, their plan was punish the South for the war. We punish them because of what they did, because of all the lives that were lost because of them. It's their fault for the war, and we should punish them. So you're going to have them there that Andrew Johnson and both Abraham Lincoln was going to have to deal with. Now, Abraham Lincoln, he had the advantage of the country loved him, at least the North loved him, and people had great respect for him. Andrew Johnson, not the most lovable of characters, and he didn't have the universal appeal that Abraham Lincoln did. So Andrew Johnson's going to come in there. He's going to basically use a lot of Abraham Lincoln's Reconstruction plans to quickly get the southern states back in there. Well, the radical Republicans start freaking out when they realize that they're allowing states back into the Union. And what are these southern states doing? A lot of them are electing as representatives, as senators, and that kind of thing, people that had been part of the Confederate government. And the radical Republicans like, no, this is not going to happen. And this is where you're going to have massive conflict start between Andrew Johnson and the radical Republicans. You'll be able to read through the details in the slide presentation, but basically know his entire presidency, he served out the rest of Abraham Lincoln's term, is going to be spent fighting with the radical Republicans. The radical Republicans wanted control over Reconstruction. The issue is, of course, the Constitution doesn't say anything about secession. It doesn't say anything about nullification. It doesn't say anything about, if we do fight a civil war, who's in control of putting the country back together. So you're going to have two opposing sides here that think they should have control. And that is going to lead to a lot of conflict. So much conflict that the Republicans are going to pass the Tenure of Office Act, and they're going to override Johnson's veto, which they do frequently. They override his vetoes. And basically that Tenure of Office Act stated that Andrew Johnson could not remove officials from within the administration without Senate approval. Now, going all the way back, talking about Abraham or George Washington, I told you with George Washington, he said that with the cabinet, that the cabinet should be selected by him, president, the Senate approve it, but then as president, he be the only person that could remove those people from office. Now, with what was happening with Andrew Johnson, the Senate now, with that Tenure of Office Act being passed, they had control of who could be removed from his cabinet and administration. Again, later goes on that this Tenure of Office Act will be found unconstitutional. But they're going to have that battle. And basically the reason that the radical Republicans would pass this is because they knew that Andrew Johnson would violate it. Andrew Johnson did not like the Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, and really wanted to get rid of him. And at his first chance when Congress adjourned, he did exactly that. He fired Edwin Stanton to get him out of office. When Congress readjourns, they come back in. They immediately draw charges up against President Andrew Johnson and move to impeach Andrew Johnson. Now, quickly, understanding impeachment. Impeachment does not mean that you are removed from office. Impeachment means that charges have been brought to you against you by the House of Representatives. If those charges are brought up on you, then those move on to the Senate. The Senate will hold a trial, and then the Senate will vote on what happens. And if they vote that you are guilty, then you are removed from office. So Andrew Johnson, for violating the Tenure of Office Act, he would be impeached. It would go to the Senate. There would be a very contentious trial there of him. And remember, the Republicans are in control, so they should have been able to remove him from office and have the votes to do it. Well, when the vote comes up and happens, by one vote, Andrew Johnson will not be removed from office. And you're going to have some people that voted that said, look, this makes us really uncomfortable removing a president just because we disagree with him, not necessarily because he's done anything illegal, because later on that Tenure of Office Act would be ruled unconstitutional. So really, the presidency of Andrew Johnson, you're going to see, is just marked by constant conflict with the Republicans overruling him and constantly overruling his veto. And so overall, he's not going to be really, really super effective as president. And really, the radicals are going to be in control of Reconstruction during this time. You're going to see the radicals, they set up military districts in the South. They have a whole list of things that southern states have to do before they can be readmitted to the Union. So it's going to take states a while to be readmitted to the Union because of this. And you're going to see that that is going to lead to animosity in the South against the North and the politicians there. You're also, to help out freed slaves, you would have the Freedmen's Bureau be set up. And again, Andrew Johnson's going to have constitutional issues with that he is unhappy with that as well. So encourage you to go through that slides presentation and actually read through and go through the details of what happens. It is notable that Andrew Johnson would be the first president to ever be impeached. Since he's the only one to be impeached, or he's the first to be impeached. And then later on, we will have Bill Clinton, who is impeached. And then, of course, most recently, Donald Trump would be impeached. Those are the only three presidents to be impeached. Notably, all three of them were found not guilty of the charges and allowed to keep the office of the presidency. And a lot of people like to throw Richard Nixon in there, but Nixon was smart enough to resign before he could be impeached, because Nixon probably would have been our first president to actually be removed from office if it had gone to a trial. So again, these early stages of Reconstruction noted a lot of political infighting, and really you're going to see that this is really bad for the American people in a lot of ways, but especially bad for African Americans, because you're going to see the longer Reconstruction drags on, the more Americans want to get past it. They want to be done with the war, and they want to be done with the Reconstruction. And one of the major goals of radical Republicans in Reconstruction was to secure the rights of African Americans. And while they do push and get the 14th and the 15th Amendment passed, which gave equal rights to African Americans and gave voting rights to African Americans, you're going to see on a whole that Americans get really just tired of dealing with the Civil War and the aftermath of it, and tired of the fighting, and are like, hey, let's just move past this. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next video here. So as always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me and I will help you however I can. Today, you're actually going to be doing a report card of Reconstruction and actually evaluating what exactly happened in Reconstruction and coming up with your own Reconstruction plan, what you would do if you were president to reconstruct the country. So hope you have a great day and enjoy learning about the Reconstruction.